So Sean, what I'm saying is moving forward, we want to continue to help Christians by giving them good answers to hard questions. But beyond, more than that, we want to help them learn where the answers come from, why the answers that Scripture gives us make sense. We want to help them see the whole picture the way that Jesus does.
You're listening to the Prepared to Answer podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And just a reminder that all the resources mentioned in this episode are linked in the episode description. You can find other related resources on our website at preparedtoanswer.org. And don't forget that we recently put out a new video series called So Much More Than Sex that will help you discover God's beautiful and eternal purpose for your sexuality. Check it out through the link in the description.
Welcome to the Prepared to Answer podcast. My name is Sean Walker, and we are live.
What a crowd. Boy,
wow.
This is exciting.
We're live in KW.
Kitchener-Waterloo.
Yeah, for the Prepared to Answer. And this is actually a banquet.
This is our fall celebration banquet, yeah.
Yeah.
And the first time we've ever done a live podcast.
Yeah.
This is exciting.
And I know it's a banquet because you look good.
No shirt. I'm not wearing a Star Wars t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Did you buy that shirt yourself?
No. I have someone who buys my clothes for me.
So
a very special person.
We thank our wives for dressing us tonight. Yes. But we're excited. Great episode. We're going to do a review of what's happening with Prepared to Answer. We're going to start off with PTA Go, get an update from our Go partners. We actually have live interview tonight, which is great. We've got some videos. We're going to take a look at what's happening in PTA, what's kind of been going on this year. And then a vision for where God is leading us.
Right.
Kind of what the future looks like.
Yeah.
But not only is this a live podcast, there's something else special about this podcast.
Yeah, actually, I was doing that. I went back and looked at that. So we started this podcast just in the time of COVID. Actually, COVID was a bit of a push for us to start. So this is our 4th year. I went back and did the counting from the start. Yeah. This is actually our 80th recorded podcast. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've got some extra episodes in there that are just like blog posts and things like that, but you and me talking together 80 times. It's been terrific. We've enjoyed, I went back and listened to our first podcast.
Yeah, no one should do that. It's a bad idea.
We actually started our first podcast. It was during COVID, so we had to do it by distance. We did it over Zoom. Sean was at his house in a closet. I was at my house, and I put blankets around my desk to kind of soundproof, and we recorded that way. Yeah. And it was terrible.
It was awful.
It was an awful, you and I, it sounded like 2 wooden puppets that had been carved for an episode.
And everything was scripted. Sean, you need to say this next.
Yes.
Scott, that was an amazing point.
I actually wrote Sean's questions for him. He'd ask a question, and I'd say, that's a good question. I have an answer for that. Yeah, anyway. It's been a great journey, and we've enjoyed interacting with people. Surprising finding out, where people are from who listen to the podcast, and it's just been a great avenue for speaking and raising up issues and answering questions and discussions that Christians are eager and interested to listen to.
Yeah. But we have some feedback, and we appreciate feedback from all of our listeners. Good and bad. We have people that disagree with some of the stuff we say, and that's fine. That's good. Yep. Opens up discussion.
We do. We got I just wanted to share this. We had one listener who sent a note in, and this just warmed our heart. This was Cheryl who wrote in. She's a listener. She said, "Thanks so much for your wonderful and timely podcast. I listen to pretty much every episode while driving to work, and each one always gets me thinking, especially as the topics relate to all that's going on in our culture today. So appreciate this kingdom work, helping me to think, see, hear, and process things more like Jesus." That's just music to our ears. Yeah, that was a real encouragement to get that from Cheryl. Yeah. So if you ever feel like you're led to just, hey, we really enjoyed that, and then go on your way, if you think, maybe I should send a note, send a note. We do appreciate hearing those things. Or if you don't agree with what you heard, send a question. That's just fine too.
Yeah, that's great.
So, Sean, I thought that a good place to start in terms of just looking back and seeing what God's been doing is to talk about our PTA Go partners.
Yeah. for sure.
So, and that's been a big part of your job over the last 3 years. So I thought, why don't you take that?
Yeah. For any of our listeners or anyone that's been to our banquet, you've heard about PTA Go. So this is an initiative we started about 3 years ago, and it's devoted to launching faith-building next-generation ministries, like-minded, and we've been blessed with 2 great partners, really great partners. And so we actually get to hear from Matt Belfay from Doubters Welcome.
Yeah.
If you've been at our banquets before, you would have heard from him. He's sent a video for us.
Yeah, so let's hear from Matt.
Hello, Scott. Hello, Sean. And hello to everyone at the PTA banquet. Let me jump right into it. Truth Snack has officially changed its name to Doubters Welcome. On September 5th, 2017, I uploaded a video to YouTube launching Truth Snack. And at the time, that name made a lot of sense. They were short videos with theological reflections on faith. But as the ministry matured and as my sense of calling developed, the ministry became squarely focused on ministering to doubting Christians. I realized that the name Truth Snack was not communicating that as quickly and clearly as it needed to. Doubters Welcome immediately communicates that this ministry is for doubting Christians and they are going to find the support that they are looking for here. What's great about the name change is that it doesn't change any of the day-to-day operations and the mission is staying exactly the same. I hope you're as excited as I am about this name change. Now, to spend just a few moments looking back on the last 12 months of ministry or so, I can say that the YouTube videos we put out had a reach beyond the videos I've put out previously. The podcast released a second season, doubling the podcast library, but more than doubling the listenership. In the past 12 months, Doubters Welcome has invited more doubting Christians into supportive one-on-one conversations than ever before. And downloadable digital curriculum have continued to be downloaded for use in local churches around the world. When a church uses a series, it allows the doubting Christians in their churches to know that they can express their doubts and receive the support they need from those around them. When it comes to Doubters Welcome, I'm not sure it gets much better than that. So of course, I'd love to tell you about how this work has impacted people, but instead, I'd like to let them speak for themselves.
Hello, my name is Cheyenne. I myself deal with a lot of doubt, and so it has been really refreshing for me to have a ministry that gets it. Years ago, I was plagued by doubt, and I had no idea how to cope, and no one around me really knew how to help me cope either, but the exception to that was Matt. What I needed then, and continue to need as a doubter, was someone who had been there and could say from experience that they had made it through. Insights into doubt and what causes it and what it looks like in the Bible and what God's heart is towards those of us who are in the midst of it. And these are all things that you find in Doubters Welcome. Matt's hard work and personal experience have given him the ability to have his fingers on the pulse of the doubting Christian. He offers to journey alongside you, recognizing that doubt is complex and multifaceted and that a quick fix is unlikely. I actually found myself choked up listening to an episode of the podcast recently because the hope and encouragement offered just really resonated. So all in all, I'm very thankful for Matt's ministry and see so much unique value to what is found in it. Thanks.
So my name's Dan. I think that Doubters Welcome is such a breath of fresh air. We use it at our church. We've used it with our youth group. We've done a series. I've also used it on a Sunday morning. Here are some of the reasons why I think Doubters Welcome stands out. First of all, it's free to use. It's mission-minded. I love that Doubters Welcome comes from a place of honesty. I think that Matt explains extremely complex concepts in a very simple way. It's also really gracious and inviting. I think that church people are absolutely petrified of asking a stupid question. What Doubters Welcome does is it undoes the lie that doubts are something to be ashamed of. Back to Matt. Cheers.
In the coming months, Doubters Welcome is launching a few initiatives to help Doubters Welcome be more accessible and relational. The first way this is being done is with 30 days of encouragement for Journeys of Doubt. Doubting Christians can sign up for a short email per day for the next 30 days, each including an encouraging insight to help them journey through doubt. On top of that, this fall, Doubters Welcome hopes to run its first online cohort a place where doubting Christians can come together and learn and come back together again to discuss how their journey through doubt has been going. I hope you can see that a lot has happened in the last 12 months and a lot is going to happen in the months and years to come. But we have to pause and remember that every victory for Doubters Welcome is a shared victory. First and foremost with Christ, who empowers this work and invites us to take part in his ministry to doubting Christians. But it's also a shared victory with each other. This ministry is possible because of PTA Go and your generous support and your prayers. It has empowered ministry to doubting Christians. And for that, I cannot thank you enough. Have a wonderful evening, and peace be with you.
Sean, that's really it's encouraging to hear from Matt. We always love to hear from Matt, but what's been really cool is to see how Doubters Welcome, Truth Snack, now Doubters Welcome, has been maturing as a ministry, how God's been using Matt to take his own journey from doubt to confident faith, to then use that as an opportunity to start shepherding and mentoring, helping churches create safe spaces for Christians to maneuver and work through doubt. And it's just been a real blessing to be part of launching and now seeing this ministry mature and grow.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd encourage our listeners, those at the banquet, to join that 30 days of encouragement. It's a great resource. They're short emails you get. You don't have to spend a ton of time reading, but really well done. So yeah, we're really excited about the next steps for Doubters Welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. And our next PTA Go partner, Mike McGarry.
Wait a second.
Mike's with Youth Pastor Theologian, and I think we introduced, or we
just
mentioned.
introduced Mike to you at last year's banquet. For those of you who are part of it, we were kind of still in process in terms of Mike coming on with PTA Go and the process of launching Youth Pastor Theologian, and now today.
And now here I am.
And poof, here you are.
Wow.
All the way from the Boston area.
All the way from Boston.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you here. Mike, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about why PT is, where it kind of got started.
Yeah, thank you so much for like 1,000 things. For having me here today. So I was a youth pastor for 18 years, church-based youth pastor, and I've always been a theologically minded youth pastor, which is pretty isolating and lonely, actually. In case you're unfamiliar, youth ministry and theological depth don't have a long history of being connected with each other. So yeah, as a theologically minded youth pastor, it's always been difficult to figure out, like, where do I find good resources? How do I think biblically and theologically about ministry and evangelism and discipleship of the youth? How do we call youth into faith that's big enough for them to grow into? Or am I just passing on like a kid-sized faith that they're outgrowing? So obviously you can hear the like-mindedness here. And I started Youth Pastor Theologian as a blog, and then it slowly caught on, and then people asked for a podcast. I was like, I don't really know how to do a podcast, but okay. And so I did that, and then met someone who introduced me to Matt Belfay, and then Matt and I talked over Zoom, and then he was like, I think I know some guys who you really need to talk to. And so then Matt...
Who was it?
I know. Yeah, exactly. Some really strange Canadians. So that's how we got connected. Yeah. And I mean, Youth Pastor Theologian was growing. I was a full-time youth pastor. I have 2 teenagers and a wife at home. And I just couldn't do all of those things together. So I was in this real turmoil of, do I literally just close down Youth Pastor Theologian even though I really think it's needed? But there's no money in that. Yeah. Or do I leave my church and start YPT as a ministry? But I'm a pastor. I don't know how to start a ministry. And I was really wrestling with those questions. And then the Lord delivered PTA Go. And I know that sounds like a sales pitch, but it really is just the story of how this happened.
So, Mike, for the folks here and listening online and watching online, maybe just give a bit of a snapshot. So what kind of work is involved in YPT, Youth Pastor Theologian?
Yeah, so I kind of break down what Youth Pastor Theologian does in 3 buckets. So we are developing resources, training, and support to equip youth ministers to do theologically rich ministry for just normal teenagers. So we're not trying to develop little systematic theologian professors in the youth room, but we are trying to make Christians in our church. And I hope that we're trying to talk about God with teenagers. And you'd be really surprised how difficult it is to find good, practical, rich, accessible resources, training, and support to do that. So where I've written a few books, we write a blog with fresh content every week, podcasts every week, speaking at churches and conferences and workshops and connecting with other youth workers really all around the world. I've been really surprised. Mm-hmm. I didn't intend for this to be an international ministry, and yet a third of our readers and listeners are outside of the United States, unintentionally, just because there is such a lack of resources for biblical theological depth in youth ministry that people are finding it online and asking for more help for a curriculum that we're working to develop, and also working to launch a new series of workshops that are church-based, that we can go to churches and host these day-long workshops to train volunteers in how to teach with biblical depth and pastoral clarity. So,
and I was just going to say,
that's a lot.
And I was just going to say, you're like Youth Pastor Theologian, your material really is geared at, the majority who are lay volunteer, our youth leaders, the people who serve in our churches and lead.
Yeah, youth volunteer theologian just doesn't have the same brain.
Well, no, it doesn't. Yeah. But that's who you're really trying to equip to do the people who are in the front lines of youth ministry.
Yeah, just good youth ministry.
Yep.
Yeah, and in launching of that workshop, talking about that workshop, we were hoping to launch that next year, do a couple of pilots, right?
Yeah.
And you asked a few people, and you've got two pilots this fall, and you're booked up for next year, and people are asking for more.
It's crazy. Yeah. So we have our first workshop in a couple of weeks. We already only have one date left through 2025. And we just announced this less than a month ago. Yeah. And the dates have already been gobbled up by churches who want to host this, because they're saying how do I train my Sunday school teachers and my small group leaders? And there are other young youth pastors in my community who would really benefit from this. And so it's just been really exciting to see kind of how the Lord is already using this.
Yeah. And so part of PTA Go was to help you get launched, right? To find support, get structures put in place. And the idea of PTA Go is that at some point you launch into your own ministry. Yeah. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about where YPT is in that journey.
Yeah, we're currently, I have an advisory council that is very international, because the ministry is increasingly international. So we have members from America, from Canada, and from Australia to help add a global voice and direction into the future of the ministry. We're partnering with an organization called Friends of the Great Commission, who helps with some of the accounting and organizational structures. But your counsel and help really has been instrumental in helping me think organizational leadership and just kind of how do you build this well from the early days, so you don't have to go back and fix a lot of the leaky foundation holes and everything. So we're on our way to being able to be self-sustaining, and a lot of that is because of you guys and your support for the ministry.
Yeah, and our family of supporters has been is a huge part of that. Yeah. And the way I often look at it is I see Mike and Matt. God's just allowed us to find basically servants that He's calling to do something specific for the next generation. We're finding people who were us 12 years ago. Yeah. Right. And but as you said, how do you start a ministry? And over 12 years.
So you're saying I'm going to grow hair back?
It's possible. We're in the miracle business.
That's awesome.
That's right. Yeah. No, very good. Well, awesome. It's been a blessing for us, Mike, and we're glad. Thanks for making the trip all the way up from Boston.
Yeah. You're welcome, eh?
Yeah.
We don't say that.
Now, before Mike goes, though, we're going to do something that we haven't done on our podcast or at our banquet before.
Oh.
Yes. Is we're going to air a little dirty laundry.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I'm not prepared for this.
No, neither two of them know that I'm going to do this. So there's been a bit of tension between Mike and ourselves. It really it builds in the spring. It really built this spring. So Mike and his family are big Bruins fans.
It's true.
Yeah.
You're just getting me booted out of here. Huh?
And so we thought, you know what, this might be the best time to try to relieve that tension.
An olive branch.
An olive branch, yes. Exactly. We feel like this might be the time. So we've got you a gift.
Okay.
To help with this. And we're hoping that this will help with the tension.
This will pour some oil on the waters of international turmoil.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, I like it. I like what I see.
There we go. Chill in the back.
Yes.
And the 23 stands for when you joined our team.
I like it. All right. So I can't sell this on eBay.
No, you cannot. We want to see it every Leaf Bruin game.
The next Bruins game you're at, we're going to be looking for you.
I love it, and thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
That's awesome. That was awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Well, it's been great to hear from both our Go partners, Sean. It's just been a real blessing. And I think a good reminder as well, realizing that for our family of supporters, you understand this is something God has led Prepared to Answer to do.
Yes.
And you have enabled that. God's taken your support for Prepared to Answer and multiplied it. And that's the part that's just so exciting for us to see ministry multiplying for next generation impact.
Yeah. It is amazing. So if you are a supporter of PTA, you are also a supporter of YPT. You're also a supporter of Doubters Welcome, and you're also a supporter of whatever that next ministry is.
Speaking of which, there's my question, Sean.
Yes.
Who's next? That's what everyone wants to know is, wow, this is exciting. Yes. Who's next? What's going on?
Exactly. And the exciting thing is we don't know because God brought us both Matt and Mike. And honestly, you can go back to previous podcasts or even at other banquets, we've talked about just how God orchestrated it. There's no other explanation for both of these guys and how we ended up the way that we were. So what we do is we pray. And so we ask our supporters, we ask those that are listening to be praying for us, praying for that next Go partner, whoever that might be, because we know God is already working there. And we're just waiting to see, and we're excited to see who that is.
Yeah. So what are we doing next?
Oh, yeah, our ministry.
Oh,
PTA,
right, Prepared to Answer. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's try another lead in on that, Sean.
Yeah. Okay. So, Scott, what's happening with PTA?
I'm glad you asked, Sean. That's a great question.
Yes.
Yeah, so we want to talk about Prepared to Answer and what God's been doing over the past year on our staff. And I'm just so thankful to work with certainly Sean, but Becca, our media specialist, and Julia, our admin support. And we just are happy to have such a blessed team. Just again, kind of just a recapping for our own family of supporters here, but also for those of you who are new to our ministry. A big part of what we do is live speaking. So although a lot of what we do is online, our heart is very much we're pro-local church. We love the local church. Yes, we want to serve the Church of Christ broadly, and the internet allows us to do that very well. But our heartbeat still is for the church community in our region. And so we seek to partner as much as we can with our church communities in KW, London area. Exeter is kind of our hub, and into the GTA as well, kind of our region around southwestern Ontario, where we'll do speaking or teaching or training in churches. We also have partnered with some campus ministries, and I think we'll give a shout out to Power to Change.
Yeah, Power to Change.
We have some they're represented tonight. Yes. So thank you for being here tonight. Some students from Waterloo and Conestoga and Laurier, and we're just happy about that too. And other ministries as well. We've served with just a few parachurch ministries in our region just to provide some training and speaking is a big part of what we do. Another part of our work is resource creation for churches, for Christians. In the last few years, we've been able to produce 3 different video series on various subjects around culture, biblical theology. One that we produce is called Seeing the World as Jesus Sees It, which is really a very brief introduction to biblical theology. It's an overview of what we call the grand story of the Bible. And that's a resource that's available for churches and small groups. This year, of course, we released our most recent series, which was a short series, a 4-part series, basically unfolding a biblical theology of sexuality, which is a huge subject, of course,
right now
in our culture, and especially for the next generation. So we developed a series called So Much More Than Sex, really to help Christians gain a positive biblical vision of human sexuality, to help equip us not only to stand confidently in what we believe, but also to have meaningful, thoughtful conversations with the world around us who may not see things the way that Christians do. We've been getting some good feedback on that series, especially from some of the churches. We sent some personal communications out to about 100 churches in our region and got some good feedback from many of the church leaders there. I know one church in the GTA, they're planning to use the series church-wide with their small groups this fall, which is exciting. We're looking forward to see how that plays out as the ministry season for churches carries on this year. I got a call back from one elder at a church in the Mississauga area. He was very encouraging in just giving us some feedback, so I thought I'd just share that with the folks here too.
Hey Scott and the team at Prepare to Answer, thank you for that video series, So Much More Than Sex. I've done it, I've taught it, I've told others to take it. I particularly like the way you connected it to the creation narrative. It helped create a sequence, it helped me understand certain concepts. And I pray that God will continue to use you and your team to come up with more video series and podcasts, great themes that are relevant to the church and to the individuals. Thank you and God bless.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah, it's the church partnership part of our ministry is probably the one that we really cherish the most. Being able to teach in churches, to be able to support church ministries as well.
Yeah.
One of the things we love about being able to go into churches where people can know us, who we are, and know our names, and we can develop relationships. But that allows us also to hear firsthand from the people that we serve and the people who we want to help and reach, and get feedback from them. Recently, we spent a little bit of time with some young adults from one of the partner churches that we've served for a number of years, because what we wanted to do is just, again, get firsthand from them, what are some of the big questions? What are some of the big concerns that your generation is facing, so that we can, be better equipped and better informed on how we can serve them. So I thought it would be helpful for our folks here tonight and those online as well, just to get a bit of perspective from some of those in the next generation, and just hear what they have to say. So here's a bit of feedback from them.
I feel like as a Christian, my church should be the place where I'm able to ask questions free of judgment, because the world's always talking about judgment and cancel culture and always trying to tell you what's right and what's wrong. But I like the fact that my church is focusing on giving us answers, but also making it a place where I can have doubts, I can have questions, and I don't feel like I'm being judged for it. Everything outside of my church is telling me the opposite of what I should know and what I should be doing. If I had to think about things that people are wrestling with, one of the big ones is, if God's so great, why do bad things happen? Why do people die? Why do bad things happen to good people, but good things happen to bad people? Does Jesus really exist? Is God really all-knowing, all-powerful?
Is this the path I'm supposed to be on career-wise? Will this make me happy? Will this glorify God?
If God is so good, why is my life the way that it is? And also, even in the bad things that do happen in my life, how can I see God in it? How can I see His hand on my life when I'm not really sure where He is in it and what He's doing right now? So Scott's been in to do a couple of different talks. I know there was the one about I think we talked a little bit about cancel culture. I know we talked about like sex and sensuality and sexuality. We talked about that as well.
Well, for a church perspective, it's always empowering to know that they actually do support the next generations and are giving them different opportunities. They also see that things do change over time and will continue to change, and Prepared to Answer generally has those answers for us. But on a personal note, it's a little bit easier to be like, I'm not the only one with these questions, and they're able to walk you through what you need to know. It's very empowering and emboldens me to walk in my faith a little bit more outwardly with other people. If I'm talking to somebody, I can give them the links and resources that you guys have, and or that they can investigate on their own time.
It's easy to get siloed into your own church, but it's great when you're able to actually get information from other sources that are trusted. And I just think it's a really great ministry, and I'm so happy that I've been able to participate and also be able to connect with the team more.
It's great to hear from the next generation. It's interesting, some of those questions are a little different than the questions we were probably getting when we first started this ministry.
Yeah. And what's encouraging to hear too is, and we're hearing it more and more, how young people are expressing their churches are becoming safe places to deal with hard questions.
Yeah.
And they have hard questions, which is wonderful to hear. I know that's a big part of Matt's passion as well.
Yeah.
But what's neat is to be a ministry that's trusted by churches to come and partner to address those, to come in and help churches be a safe place where those kinds of hard questions can be asked. So that's a real privilege for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Scott, we've heard a lot of what's been happening at Prepared to Answer at our PTA Go partners. What does the future look like? Where are we going?
Well, you know what, Sean? Probably, folks, you've noticed when you came in, on the invitations, on all of the communications for our banquet, we were very careful about choosing our banquet theme this year. Clear vision for faithful mission, because we're just coming into the tail end of our 12th year of ministry. And that question is one that actually, with our board, we've been asking most of this year of, okay, so what does the future look like? And one of the things we realize, it's very easy when you get into ministry to get into routine and then just kind of continue to go and just maintain. And we always want to make sure that we're being intentional and thoughtful and also have a clear focus on what we believe in particular that God has called Prepared to Answer to do. And so that's something we've really been spending time thinking about and talking about and praying about this year, of what do things look like moving now forward into the future.
So what's the answer?
Oh, that's a good answer. That's a good question.
Yeah.
We've been praying about that. One of the things the board allowed me to do this year is to step back a bit and just spend a little time in study. And that's been very fruitful and kind of brought some insights as well. But God's also been bringing along some circumstances and conversations. And actually, there was one conversation that occurred this year. A young person approached me after a church service and told me a story about an experience she had been having at her high school with her friend group. And I listened to her story, and she actually had to do with some questions that she'd been confronted with, and she actually couldn't tell me all of it at that time. She didn't feel like she could express it right, and so she got a hold of me by email after, and we discussed more. Her story was, I think, very reflective of many of the stories of many of our young people today. And so I want to play the story of this student and just let our folks hear what I heard, and just then some of the things that God has kind of brought to our attention and to our minds as we think about answering that question. Yeah. So what does it look like from here?
All of the questions that I've had, they kind of have come from conversations I've had with friends from school. A lot of the time these conversations would just come up very randomly. You'd never really expect them. I remember I have one friend that would come over for lunch all the time because we live really close to the school. I don't really remember what started that conversation. I think we had started off disagreeing about something, and then it kind of, one thing led to the next, and she kind of just kept going with it, and then that conversation lasted for a couple of days, and she would go and talk to like the overall friend group about it, and then they'd come to me and they'd be like, hey, so what's this about? And I'd thought about what they had said, what they had brought to me, and I'm like, this is a lot of stuff that I need to consider. This is a lot of stuff that I think I need to find out for myself, as well as so that way I can bring answers to them and maybe see how that settles that for them. The big questions that they were asking were kind of like, why does God get to be the judge? And why is like his judgment so different from ours? And how could his judgment allow people like murderers and rapists and kind of bad people, like were on their deathbed and went, hold on, I believe in God, they just suddenly get into heaven? How's that fair? If he's in control of all that's going on, do we have free will? there's going to be people who aren't going to follow God, and he knows that. So how's that fair for them? Why isn't he kind of doing anything for them? Why does he need us to praise him? Doesn't that seem kind of selfish? Why does he need anything else from us? Why not just let us be after creating us? I felt a little bit ambushed sometimes. Like, some of the questions they'd ask are questions I wouldn't expect. Things that I never had thought of before, and I wasn't prepared for it. I definitely kind of felt, I guess, a little bit upset with myself walking away from some of those conversations, because, like, why couldn't I answer them? I've been living my life saying I believe this, but can't answer these questions. I didn't really know where to go with that, but I knew that Scott, he had this prepared to answer thing going on. It was kind of cool. Maybe I should ask him. Well, it definitely gave me a little bit of comfort, because I knew then that we could find answers for those questions. And I know Mr. Steen personally, so it was kind of an extra comfort to be able to reach out to him. And it helped, like, grow my faith too, because their questions, when I couldn't answer them, they turned into my questions. So not only was I able to get an answer for them, I was able to get an answer for myself and be a little bit more well prepared for the next time a conversation like that would come up.
Well, Sean, that was a really cool story. Neat to hear a story from a young person who, again, I think, whose story reflects kind of an average Christian young person. And imagine being in a situation with a friend group at school and getting, like, machine gunned with all of those did you catch all the questions?
Yeah.
One after another, after another, after another. Mm-hmm. And I think she put it lightly in saying she felt ambushed.
Yeah.
Panicking like she couldn't respond and didn't have an answer that she could give.
What stood out for me, though, Scott, in that was that she said we were cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't.
That doesn't happen.
I didn't miss that part either. No.
No.
Other than my mom, I think that's the first time anyone else has said that.
The other thing that really stood out for me was that their questions became her questions.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right? It was a great reminder of why the work we do, I think, is so important, of helping to supply the next generation with good answers to difficult faith questions. Yeah. And not being afraid to confront them, not being afraid to voice them, and also to realize, you know what, sometimes there's doubt involved, but it just was a good reminder for me, yeah. What I found really interesting, and she said it herself, she said that, you know, they were questions that I hadn't expected. And I think I shared with you, she initially kind of described the experience to me, but at the time she just didn't feel like she could express it all, and so she said, can I email you later the questions that they gave me? And I said, absolutely. And to be honest, Sean, I was expecting different questions. I was expecting, hey, how can you be a Christian and not believe in evolution? Or what about, you know, your views on things like sex or gender, morality or whatever? And those weren't the questions. What I found really interesting were that all of her friends' questions were theological. They were questions about, how can you believe in this God who apparently is like this? And that part really struck me.
Yeah.
Linking up again with our Go partners, the importance of good theology. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mike.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. For the next generation.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of something crucially important also, that as a ministry, we really want to be about more than just providing answers to questions. Because the challenge that we face as Christians is not living in a world full of questions. It's living in a world full of people who have an entirely different view of the world or set of assumptions about the nature of life in this world and what this world means and who God, if he exists, is and what he's like. Entirely different interpretation of what life and reality is all about, that stands completely at odds with the true vision of reality that God's given us in the Bible through Christ.
Right. So, but if you're talking about we're not supplying answers, we are still, as a ministry, though, going to be diving into issues and topics.
Sure, absolutely. No, it's not that we don't want to be about providing good answers, but we can't just supply good answers, because that's not our need. No one can learn all the answers you need to know. Right? It's not like we can just be walking catalogs of answers to questions. That's not how we stand confident in our faith. That's not how we bear witness.
But that's often what we do, though. We get a question and we just want to go find the answer. to make ourselves feel better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes what we don't realize is that question comes from a place that's completely at odds with the ultimate foundation of truth that we stand on as Christians. And I think that's sometimes what upsets particularly young people when there's a question, that question makes sense. I can't answer that question. It makes it look as if God is evil or God isn't good, and they don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I realize, Sean, is that we not only want to be able to point people to good answers, but also teaching Christians how to see the world through the lens, through the what we call the grand story of the Bible, to understand that the Bible doesn't just give us isolated answers to particular questions. It gives us a grand vision of reality, of seeing the world through a whole different lens, that is the lens of God's truth, that is ultimately through the lens of the person of Jesus. And we have in Jesus more than just a model for knowing how to live.
Yeah.
Right? Often we think following Jesus means, we just need to know what would Jesus do.
WWJD.
Right.
Yeah.
When, as a ministry, what we're really convinced of and convicted of is that not only do we need to learn how to live like Jesus, but I think even more fundamental to that and key to that is learning to think like Jesus.
Yeah.
And that means helping Christians learn to think the way that Jesus learned to think.
Hold on a second. You said learned.
Yeah.
So Jesus learned to think?
Yes. I chose my words specifically.
Okay, but Jesus was divine.
Yes.
And so did he not come with full knowledge?
Jesus was the Son of God.
Yeah.
Equal with the Father.
Mm-hmm.
Equal in being with God.
Yeah.
But the doctrine of the incarnation, the truth the Bible tells us is that Jesus came into the world as a man. He became human. Mm-hmm. Yes, the eternal Son of God forever took on himself the nature of humanity. So that, yes, he's the Son of God, but he's also, as the writer of Hebrews says in Hebrews 2, that he was made like us, fully human in every way, so that he could be a faithful high priest and make atonement for the sins of the people. Which means that Jesus had to learn how to think. And Luke touches on this in Luke 2.
Okay.
He says, when he talks about Jesus going to the temple with his parents at the age of 12, it says that Jesus grew in wisdom. He learned. Like any person, like any human being, Jesus had to learn to think about life in this world. And that means, actually, what I see from Scripture, and what this is kind of the interesting part, that there were some key and core principles that shaped and guided the way that Jesus thought about everything. Principles that are no less necessary for his followers who want to live like Jesus, to know and understand. So Sean, what I'm saying is moving forward, we want to continue to help Christians by giving them good answers to hard questions. But beyond, more than that, we want to help them learn where the answers come from, why the answers that Scripture gives us make sense.
Right.
We want to help them see the whole picture,
right,
the way that Jesus does.
Okay, so for our ministry, what does this look like going forward?
Yeah,
for us?
One of the things we're doing this fall, actually, I've already made some plans with one of our church partners in the region, and we're going to work with their young adults ministry, and we're developing a new teaching series, not surprisingly, called Learning to Think Like Jesus. Yeah. So that's kind of our first step forward, is we want to start developing more specifically. Let's unpack the principles. Let's unpack the mindset of Jesus and understand, what made him tick, what made his mind work the way it worked, as the Son of God, but fully man.
Yeah, no, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And for the podcast, for our other episodes?
Yeah, well, actually, we've already started that journey. One of the things that we realized, Sean, you and me, is that learning to think like Jesus is a lifelong process. We can't write that on a card and give it to you and say, there you go.
Yeah.
And we've realized, we still have some things to learn here in terms of how do we see that our minds become shaped and formed to reflect the mind of Christ. So with our podcast this year, we're using that really, and we've begun a thought journey where you and I are investigating some of these cores to the mind of Jesus, to what formed and shaped his own mind.
Right.
And we're going to start unpacking that just in discussion on our podcast and inviting our listeners, our audience into that journey as well, as we learn along the way.
And as we're going through that journey, though, we will be tackling issues of the day.
Sure. I mean, it doesn't mean we're not going to, there might be some things coming up. Who knows? There are some interesting events happening this year.
Yep.
November is something that comes to mind.
Yes.
Things happening in our world. Sure, we're going to still tackle some of the important issues that we want to talk about. But as we do, we want to bring into the discussion, how does the mind of Christ inform this? How does Jesus' understanding inform a response to or understanding of these kinds of issues?
Yes.
And the last thing, probably, Sean, what this is going to look like. Folks, tonight you've all received a little gift on your table there. If you're not at our banquet this year, then you're missing out. Because you're all going to take home, this is a juice cup.
Juice only.
Juice or milk. I know it might look like it contains other beverages, but it's not, I assure you. But it's got on one side our logo just to remind you who we are and just as a token of our appreciation. But on the back side, we've developed a little visual reminder for us as a ministry and something that that's going to help us keep on the forefront of our mind and our discussion and our mission, that we really want to be about helping people to think like Jesus. So this little logo, this little image, it's going to pop up more. You're going to see it more often, just to help us keep it at the front of our mind. The part that we believe God's called us to play in this great endeavor of, raising up a new generation is to help the next generation think like Jesus. Because here's the exciting thing, Sean. Jesus never faced a question or an objection or a challenge or a confrontation that he could not respond to. Mm. And we might say, oh, that's because he was the Son of God.
Right.
Well, yes, that's right. But he was fully human. And what equipped him as Jesus the man to respond was that he had a human mind perfectly conformed to God's true word, which God has also given to us. And his mind was enabled by the Holy Spirit. He was the perfect Spirit-filled man, the same Holy Spirit that God has given to us. And Jesus longs to see us transformed into his likeness by sharing these same gifts with us. That's the exciting part for me. Jesus actually said this to his disciples in John 15:15. He said, I no longer call you, he's talking to his followers, I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends for everything, now catch this, for everything that I learned from my Father, I've made known to you.
Yeah.
We want to help people think like Jesus. We want to help Christians, Sean, think like Jesus, because Jesus wants us to know what he knows.
Yeah.
That's the thrilling part. That's what excites me. And we want to help pass that excitement on and make that real in the lives of Christians. Yes, all Christians, but we have a real heartbeat, a real burden for the next generation.
Yeah. No, that is exciting, Scott. And we're looking forward to that journey with our audience, with our supporters. I want to thank everyone here at KW. You guys were amazing. Let's hear it for KW. Yes. Well done. Yeah, no, we're looking forward to that journey, Scott. And again, want to thank our partners that help support this ministry.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And until next time, God bless.
Thanks for listening to the Prepared to Answer podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any questions or comments you'd like to share with us, feel free to email us at info@preparedtoanswer.org, contact us through Facebook or Instagram @preparedtoanswer, or use the contact form on our website, www.preparedtoanswer.org.